The Mandalorian and Grogu is a frustrating movie to talk about because the best thing most people are going to say about it is that it was a good time at the theater. And sure, there are moments in this film that are genuinely entertaining, but when you look at the legacy of this franchise, and specifically the legacy of what The Mandalorian built over its first 2 seasons, a movie that is just a good time feels like a massive waste of potential. So what I want to do today is go through what this movie got wrong, why I think Disney made a mistake letting it exist in this form, and most importantly, how I would have fixed it with some pretty simple changes that did not require blowing up the whole story. So the two big problems I have with this film come down to this. The movie is completely hollow, and it does nothing meaningful for the larger Star Wars universe. Let me start with the first one, because this is what everybody's already talking about, is that there is no character arc here. Mando does not change. Grogu does not change. There is no central theme that the film is actually exploring in any meaningful way. What you get instead is action beat, plot point, another action beat, slightly bigger action beat, and then credits. The story is basically Mando takes a job from the Hutts, finds the target does not want to come back, things go sideways, Grogu has to save Mando, and then they take out the villains together. That is the plot. That is all there is. Now, some people will push back and say the movie is loosely about the idea of the younger generation stepping up to protect the older one, and technically yes, that idea shows up in a couple of lines of dialogue near the end, but that is not a theme. That is a writer realizing their movie has nothing to say and inserting a line of dialogue to create the illusion of depth. A real theme has to be tested throughout the entire film. Characters have to be put in situations that challenge them and force them to grow. That does not happen here at any point. You could skip this movie entirely and show up to whatever comes next, and you would not have missed a single meaningful development for either of these characters. That is a serious problem. The second issue is that this movie does absolutely nothing for the Star Wars lore, and that is inexcusable given where we are in this timeline and what is already set up around it. Now, I know some people will say that not every Star Wars story needs to have galaxy-altering consequences, and I actually agree with that. Andor is an incredibly character-focused show, and it does not need to be about saving the universe to feel important. But here's the thing. Andor still adds real weight to the lore of the Rebellion and the Empire. You walk away from that show feeling like you understand this world better than you did before. The Mandalorian and Grogu adds nothing. And the frustrating part is that there are opportunities sitting right there in the script that the filmmakers completely ignored. This movie takes place between Ahsoka Season 1 and Season 2. At the end of Ahsoka Season 1, Grand Admiral Thrawn returned to the galaxy, and the threat of a new Imperial war became very real. That was also set up in The Mandalorian Season 3, with an Imperial Council waiting for his return. So this connection already exists within The Mandalorian's own story. Why is Thrawn not even a whisper in this movie? Nobody is asking for him to be the main villain, but even a single scene establishing that the Imperial activity Mando is dealing with connects back to something bigger would have given the film actual stakes. Instead, we get Imperial warlords with no connection to anything and information that the New Republic needs, but we are never actually told what any of it is. So here is how I would fix it. The core plot does not need to change dramatically because the point of a rewrite like this is to take what already exists and make it work better, not to throw everything out and start over. The opening action sequence on the snow planet is genuinely one of the better looking things in the film, so that stays. But the micro storytelling within that sequence needs to do more work. Instead of Mando and Grogu just being a perfect team right away, I want to establish tension. Mando is overprotective. He will not let Grogu contribute meaningfully because he is still treating him like a baby, even though Grogu is clearly capable of so much more. Maybe there is a moment where Grogu was about to handle something on his own, and Mando swooped in and accidentally made things worse because he did not trust Grogu to act independently. That one small beat plants the seed for everything else. From there, the mission with the Hutts and Rada plays out largely the same way, but the thematic underpinning of the whole thing shifts. Rada's speech about not wanting to live in his father's shadow and needing to prove himself on his own terms lands completely differently if we've already seen Grogu struggling with the same dynamic. And then, when Mando gets captured and Grogu has to go rescue him alone and nurse him back to health, that sequence stops feeling like filler and becomes the actual emotional climax of the movie. Mando wakes up, sees what Grogu was capable of when given the chance, and that is the moment he changes. A genuine apology from Mando to Grogu instead of a vague philosophical line about generations protecting each other. That is an arc. And then right before the credits, you give us one brief scene. Thrawn and an Imperial Council. Someone mentions this Mandalorian is becoming a problem. Thrawn says he will be handled. 15 seconds of screen time, and suddenly this whole movie has consequences. It connects to something larger, and it sets up a reason to come back for more. That is all it would have taken to make this a movie worth remembering, instead of something you forget about 2 weeks after watching it.